Okay, welcome back to 2 to 20, the podcast that empowers women to build, fund, and scale businesses. I'm your co-host, Julia Belt, and here today with Alex Chung of Chai Ventures. Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Julia. So excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. We're going to dive right in. So why don't we just go ahead and give everyone, let's start from the beginning. So if you want to give everyone a little background and what's your journey been so far that led you to Chai?
Sounds great. Also, this is my first podcast interview, so excited to have my podcast debut with you. Born and raised New Yorker, and then I spent some time in Chicago at the University of Chicago for school. I would say, that Steve Jobs quote during his Stanford commencement speech always resonates with me in terms of not being able to connect the dots by looking forward, but connecting them by looking backwards. So when I think about how I ended up at Chai, I think about, how I've always sort of been drawn to better understanding technology companies and thinking about, how to use tech to innovate upon business solutions. So did an internship one summer in college at Truveris, a healthcare tech startup. Learned about there how tech can really identify and optimize inefficiencies in the sort of pharmaceutical landscape. Shortly thereafter, worked at Fortress another summer on the sort of investment side of PE and growth equity. And then at Loeb NYC, a family office, learned about, again, more on the early stage side of VC investing. And then experimented with my own startup on the creator economy side of things called Sellerfan. And then directly prior to Chai, I was at Decibel, which is an independent venture capital firm that was created in partnership with Cisco to, very much push the conventional boundaries of early stage investing. So yeah, that's kind of the background, and actually studied philosophy in undergrad because I feel like that's always a question I get. But yeah, happy to
Yeah,
also expand on that and how that relates to my day to day.
Yeah, that's a big jump from philosophy to venture capital. I love it. Yeah, maybe if you could talk a little bit about your day to day. I think what part of the initiatives of the podcast is demystifying so many different
Yeah,
topics. And so, what does someone in your role do on the day to day?
yeah. So I guess I'll start my answer by maybe first thanking and shouting someone out who demystified things for me a little bit. So I have this incredible mentor. Her name is Serena Dayal. Um, I would say she introduced me to VC and not only gave me the vocabulary and the toolbox with which to explore sort of this kind of black box of a world of investing in entrepreneurship, but she also imbued me with this confidence to go into rooms, send cold emails, and etc. So I give that context first. I would say the day to day is very different every day in venture. So some days it's meeting incredible founders like yourself. Other days, it'll involve fundraising of our own. So we're, as you know, raising our second fund right now at Chai Ventures. It'll also involve a fair amount of engaging with our ecosystem. So that could come in the form of throwing some sort of event, whether it's a dinner. I did a squash event recently, which was really fun. Um, or even putting together a newsletter and figuring out where folks want to hear from us in the community and where we can continue to add value to folks. So, um, to answer your question, I think every day in VC is a little bit different. I think it's a fair amount of talking to folks, context switching between different things, and also selectively going deep on different areas or industries that matter to you and are important for, sort of the larger priorities of the firm.
I love that. So, you just listed a bunch of different things. If you had to say what your favorite thing is and what the most difficult thing is, or the thing that you like the least, what would that be?
Um, I would say my favorite thing is probably, meeting founders and supporting them and being able to hopefully be part of their journey, whether that's through obviously investing capital or making introductions or helping them ideate on different business plans. I think that's, you know, mostly why most people want to be in venture. They're in the business of, wanting to invest in people and finding the next great ideas. So I would say my least favorite part of the job is obviously saying no to people. I think it sucks. I think you want to be able to say yes 100% of the time. Nobody wants to be the bearer of bad news. But I think I've learned recently that, like, if you the art of sort of saying no in a way that is not sort of a definitive ender of a conversation or a relationship, but like a not right now and just a way to, redirect efforts in another way, I think, can be incredibly powerful. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I mean, like even kind of how our relationship started. So, I think, I think all of this is kind of more long tail than, short term.
yeah. I mean, hearing no is always really hard, but in my experience, the investors that have given very specific feedback on why they're saying no or not right now, it's been really helpful actually as a founder to hear the specifics and not just some general like excuse on why they're saying no. Like the very specific feedback has actually helped drive decisions and drive, or even just the way that I'm describing things like in the
Yeah.
pitch. So I mean, everyone's going to hear no. I think, like, what do we all say? Like, you're going to hear 100 no's before you hear a yes. And that's
Yeah.
just part of the game.
I mean, I feel like even on like the venture side too, in terms of breaking into the industry, not to like go on too much of a tangent, but I think like there's, not a ton of jobs, but there's obviously a ton of demand for working in this industry and having this job. So obviously, um, getting to that investor role on the way, like most investors, younger, get a lot of no's too. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah, no's are a common theme across the board.
Yeah, no, actually, let's. I know that it's not too much of a tangent because I actually want to talk about community building, and you mentioned
Yeah.
your mentor that kind of introduced you to everything. Um, from my perspective on you, is you are an excellent networker. Like you know so many people, and you're always like, oh, what do you need? Okay, who can I introduce you to? And you have this like Rolodex of incredible people in your community. And so, what would be your advice for someone who maybe does want to get into venture or what does want to start networking and creating community around it? Is it going to events? Is it reaching out on LinkedIn? Like how did you get your foot in the door and what would you recommend?
So I would say do all of it. And then I think when I think about that question, I would say the answer to each person and how much you dedicate into each of those buckets is definitely dependent on you and this feels really like silly, but like what feels most authentic to you. Like if you're someone who can easily spit out a lot of long form content and like that's like your way of engaging with people, then do it. But if it's like pulling teeth to write a post, then maybe host a dinner or like do something different. Um, I would say, I initially started like tweeting and posting online during kind of the height of COVID when I think we were all seeking, companionship and wanting to meet people and just talk and try to have some sense of normalcy. And I think through that, I don't know, I had some like, I was also in school at the time and working for another fund, but I had these sort of like unspoken like rules for myself where I'd want to like, do some Zooms with, X number of new people every week and just see what else was out there. Just to learn more about the industry and see what other folks' rules were like and what else was out there. I would say in terms of also just generally approaching network building and gaining a brand or a presence in the ecosystem, I would say no matter how early on you are in your career, there's always sort of a way that you can help people. So I would always approach things from like less of a what can I gain from you, and more so of a what can I help you with, even if you think, this person is so senior, they know everything. Like, there's always something you can do to help them. Like, whether it's like, I don't know, maybe they're visiting your city and like, a really secret hidden gem restaurant and you can help them get in, or you can recommend a dish. Like, there's always something or some way that you can connect with someone, and, hopefully provide value and establish that relationship.
That's such good advice too, because you're more memorable that way. Like, if you recommended, if I was visiting a city and you recommended for me to go to this incredible restaurant, I would forever remember you because I had such a good experience. Like, food is like my love language.
Yes.
So such good advice.
I mean, I gave that as like, that's like an example. And then just to tie out that question, I would say always send thank you notes. I love sending handwritten thank you notes too. I think that always goes a long way. And yeah, I think that's something that like my mom, like parents instilled in me at a young age too, is just the power of a thank you note.
No, absolutely. I'm a sucker for a handwritten note and a card too, so I love that. Okay, so switching gears a bit, one of the reasons that we started this podcast and the organization 2 to 20 is really about how the fact that only 2% of VC funding goes to all female founders. And so the reason I thought of you as a guest is because of the mission of Chai Ventures. So if you could share the investment thesis and the why behind Chai, I think it would be really helpful.
Yeah, so Chai Ventures, we're a pretty new pre-seed and seed stage fund. We're based in New York City. We're actually right now in the midst of raising fund 2, and we focus on investing in sectors where women control the majority of decision making or spending power. For us, just to pinpoint a few of those, we look at a lot of healthcare, a lot of consumer, and a lot of future of work. Our founding GP, his name is Rajiv Kapoor, he sees investing in women as, sort of the investment opportunity of our lifetime. So how can we, as a firm, leverage that and do everything possible? So we like to look, in terms of the founder profile and who we want to bring into our portfolio. We like to look at women who've obviously been underestimated in some capacity, whether it's, maybe they haven't been a founder before, but they've, have all the other criteria on their resume or experiences to make them amazing founders. We also like to take very much a full ecosystem approach with solving sort of that 2%, that, tremendous delta between the amount that goes towards women and towards men. I think I have the number. So in terms of like the 2023 data, so like women founded startups got about 2.1% of the total VC capital invested. In 2023, the total VC investment in the US was approximately like $238 billion. So then if women startups are only receiving like 2.1% of that, only $5 billion. So then the delta, the big opportunity that we're banking on, is about $233.3 billion, which is pretty exciting. And I say that, and back to the ecosystem approach, we like to think about women and their capacities as founders and capital allocators to help us make that delta smaller and just take full advantage of that. So we work with emerging women check writers and other VC funds, help them actually get to check writing positions and help them, understand what the key things are in their roles to make a partner and be successful partners. So like one thing we heard a lot from our community is like, I'm a principal or I'm a senior associate, and I know to get to partner, like fundraising is going to become a part of my job. So how to get there and do a good job is, we're helping them establish those relationships with family offices and institutions earlier on, so that when they become partners, that fundraising lift is less big.
So, what about beyond the check? So, how does Chai support founders beyond just capital?
Yeah, I would say our support pillars, I would, kind of bucket them into four core categories. So, first, I would think about, sort of customer introductions, thinking about, ways in which we can introduce our portfolio of over 50 companies to new customers. So, we have a mix of B2B and B2C. So, we have, we've introduced folks to B2B customers, whether those are folks within large enterprises, or on the B2C side, we have a company that recently pivoted, and I've introduced them to a handful of up and coming like fashion influencers to pilot their new product. So it ranges what the definition of customer looks like, but we'll go above and beyond to make sure our companies get that. Next category, I would say, our capital introductions. So we often come in at pre-seed and seed, and the hope is that companies will raise more money afterwards. So how do we introduce them to really interesting later stage investors that are also value aligned and also have the founders' best interests in mind as well? So we done that on a number of occasions. An example that comes to mind is one of our company's advisor. We introduced them to Carlani Capital, who led their round after us. Next, I would say is our ecosystem. So obviously I mentioned we have this really robust community of women founders and operators and investors and kind of ecosystem partners. So I would say, beyond just the check, we're giving folks, access to all of these amazing folks in our ecosystem at, huge companies, smaller companies, and across a wide range of industries too. And then I would say fourth way that we are supporting our founders beyond the capital is in sort of strategy and go-to-market. So Rajiv's background, he comes to this world of venture very much as a business builder. So less so as a career venture capitalist, and he's always putting his sort of consulting brain on and business building brain on in terms of thinking about how to approach founders' problems and listening to them and thinking about his own network as well, again about who are the best folks that can come in and help also mitigate these issues that founders are having. So I would say those are the four ways, and again, we're still growing too as an organization, so I'm sure that those services will continue to evolve as we grow too.
Amazing. Now I would love to demystify diligence. So for
Yes.
founders that are new to raising capital, what does it mean? What is involved? What does the process look like?
Yeah, so I will make like all of my comments based on, being an early stage investor. I think it differs obviously if you're growth and if you're going into private equity, and then family office versus venture capital. So I will speak to the early stage pre-seed seed diligence process that I've experienced at Chai and also Decibel. So basically like defining just diligence, or due diligence, whatever you want to call it. Basically when investors sort of dig into your business and the business fundamentals, to understand the risks and gauge the growth potential before, potentially making an investment or partnering or whatever it is. So at pre-seed and seed, often what we're looking at is, thinking about the team and the vision and early indicators of traction. We've invested in companies pre-revenue, so I can get into also like how we're thinking about traction without some of those key metrics. I think ultimately like the purpose of diligence, getting back to that, is investors, we want to just confirm that founders have a strong foundation, the right team and a big enough market to execute upon the vision and what they're showing us, and potentially also looking for any risks or red flags in the business that haven't come to surface yet. I think in early stage diligence, we're focusing a lot on like the founder and the team. There's been so many instances where we've invested in a company and it's pivoted dramatically. So I think you want to just understand that this is a team that's resilient and will stick with, the problem and the sector that they've committed to. Maybe their problem will change and iterate or become more specific as the company grows. But I think that founder and team focus is critical. Kind of tied to that. Oh, so, going into the like nitty gritty, like we will obviously do a number of different calls with the founder and the team, but then something else that, we did at my last firm and that we'll do now is, ask for a number of references. And I want to talk to people that they worked for and that have worked for them and that have known these folks from all, sort of avenues of life. Because I think ultimately what you want to develop by the end is like a complete-ish sort of picture of the person. So like, is this the type of person that, if something doesn't go right, like they'll get back up and, keep going? Is this the type of person that can get people really excited and, convince awesome people to join? Like, I also think another aspect of that team and founder, like diligence, is thinking about like, if it's a team where like, say you've started a company and then you've brought on like XYZ people that are really impressive. Like, I think just the fact that you're able to do that as a founder is an indicator of, your vision, your selling capabilities, like all of that kind of stuff. So that's, another thing too, is like the ability to hire people and bring great people on board is included in that too. But I would also say like, the other things like market validation, product, thinking, financials and unit economics, like obviously that'll be limited at that stage, but I think wanting to understand cash burn, how you plan to use the next capital you raise, and if there's, sort of a plan to scalable business model or even generating revenue, sometimes if it's a consumer tech platform. And then legal and compliance as well. But yeah, those are like some of the big areas. And then the ways we go about is obviously through a lot of calls, follow-up conversations. And then I think for founders, on that end, like making sure that whole process is as streamlined as possible, like thinking about setting your data room up in kind of an organized way. It's a little lighter at this stage than I would say, like, again, if you were later down the road. And then like having those, reference call folks ready, or users, some of those legal and financial checks ready too. But yeah, those are kind of the main early stage diligence things I would say that I demystify.
Okay, and then the last question around diligence is about how long does it take? So at the pre-seed stage, is it months? Does it depend? Like, what does that look like?
Definitely not months. I would more say weeks. Like for us, I think we're a smaller team, able to get to, a decision whether it's yes or no quickly. I think one thing that we, are all sort of on the same page out at our fund is just, if it's a yes or a no, just getting to a decision faster, because it helps everyone. It helps the founder then, if it's a no, we can then introduce them to other funds or whatever it is. But I would say, depending on like how the process works at each fund is, kind of how their timing will be. I can't obviously make a blanketed statement for the whole industry, but for us, it's probably weeks versus months, because I think usually it's a smaller round size, and usually we're able to get things moving faster.
If you're introduced to a founder from another fund that said no, does that influence your decision at all?
It would depend on if it's, a later stage fund, and like this was an opportunity that's definitely too early for them and out of their wheelhouse. All those sorts of factors. But I feel like, and again, back to like the people who pick this job, I think you should do this job if you are someone that like has independent thought and can form your own opinions. And I think pre-seed and seed, like there's less of that like signaling at this stage than later on. So I say no. Like it matters less to me. Like I will develop my own opinion of you and your company and your market and your team, regardless of, if another fund passed at pre-seed. I don't think it means as much.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I want to go into some rapid fire questions. So these are just quick and fun. What is your go-to source for news in the industry? Either like it could be a podcast, it could be a newsletter.
Okay, I'm gonna do like newsletter and podcast. I mean, I like Term Sheet. I think they do awesome stuff, and I like All In. I think they are really good about sort of reflecting a number of different viewpoints and letting people speak and listen to one another. So I would say those two for right now.
What is your favorite book?
I don't know if it's my favorite book, but I'm reading it right now. Michael Ovitz's sort of autobiography on his career, starting CAA, and all of his learnings along the way. I think it's super interesting.
Okay, favorite emoji?
I like the like head shaking one, the new one. The head shaking yes.
I like that one too. Do you have a favorite quote or mantra or affirmation or anything like that?
My grandfather, who passed away on my mom's side, would always say this, but success is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. I can't remember who originally said that, but he would always say that, and I totally agree. I think, doing the hard work and grinding and sticking to routine and all of that, I think is so important, and I think is what, ultimately makes a world of a difference at the end.
I love it. Okay, lastly, where can people find you if they want to reach out?
I feel like I'm everywhere. I'm pretty easily, findable, but you can find me on LinkedIn, which is just my name, or on Twitter, X, Alex Chung Tweets, or at my email, alex@TryVentures. So any of those methods, feel free to reach out. And yeah, I'm pretty easy to track down, and I look forward to chatting and continue the conversation.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alex.
Yeah, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me. My first experience, not so scary, being on a podcast. And yeah, looking forward to doing more together.